My name is Gina. This is Christian. Today we're going to build a 9-foot cam mate jib. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to take you through our crab dolly. Our crab dolly here is composed of 3 main parts that are very, very important depending on the type of jib you're building, how heavy it's going to be, and how much needs to be actually stabilized across the ground. So the first part of it is our outriggers. These outriggers actually help stabilize our jib so that to create a bigger footprint, similar to how snowshoes do in the snow. These are actually only used when you want to stay stationary with your jib. If you're planning on actually dollying it or moving it around a venue, then you don't actually want to put the outriggers out because it's going to keep that from being able to happen and make your wheels stuck in one place. So these particular outriggers are easy to take off. You just pull the pin, and it comes right off. So if you are going to stay stationary, keep these on. If you're moving around, go ahead and take them off. Go right back in. You just twist the knobs until it feels nice and taut. You do not want to make it so that the wheels are coming off of the ground. In that case, now you're kind of defeating the purpose of it. It's meant to keep the area nice and stabilized around it and disperse the weight equally. The next part on here is our nice steering wheel. The steering wheel turns all of the wheels all at once and can be moved to any of the wheels on your jib. So if you're operating from the back, you obviously do not want to put it there because it's going to obstruct your ability to move, and you're just able to kind of move it around to wherever you're going to keep it. Today we're going to keep it in the back. The last part of your crab dolly are your turnbuckles. The turnbuckles are actually what you're going to use to level your dolly. We're going to level it once we get the pedestal on, but we're going to use these to do that. These actually do come off, so if you did want to take apart your dolly, you could. This big tube would be one piece, then you'd have your turnbuckles, and you'd have finally your outriggers and your wheels. So first we're going to put on our pedestal. The pedestal has a longer knob screw that's going to go into it. The way to tell you have the right screw is that there's at least an inch showing once you line it up through the hole. On the bottom of your pedestal, you have a small guide that's going to help you get it on top. It has a nice little groove here in order for that guide to sit nicely. So we're going to go ahead and do this. Okay, once your pedestal is in place, you want to keep it pointed where you have your locks towards the back of your jib. So if I were to turn this, unlock it and turn it, you have a lock right here. You want this to be towards the back of your jib. Then you want to level your entire dolly assembly. So you have a separate level that you can use with this, but there's also a bubble that's right on the side of your pedestal. So you can use that to kind of guide you. So once your pedestal is all set and everything is level, we're going to go ahead and add our tilt lock and our center section. So our center section is characterized by this large hole in the middle. What this is going to act like, this is going to act as our pivot point for the center of our boom arm. It also has 4 1/4-inch screws, which we'll use to attach our lock. So first we'll put this on, and then we'll put on the lock. In order to get to the lock, you have to first remove the pin right here, and then pull that unit out. The shorter end of this section is going to be towards the back of the jib, pointed towards the locks that I showed you just a second ago. All right, I'll hold it and you push it through. Okay, now once you have the center section installed, you want to go ahead and install the lock. I'm going to turn this around to show you how we install that. So first you're going to unscrew all of these screws. Next you take your half moon brake, insert it in the middle there, screw that back in. And next you're going to put the actual locking mechanism into the brake. The larger piece is going to go all the way in the back. The smaller washer is going to go between the pedestal assembly and the half moon. Through. And now your center section is all locked in place. This short area is going to be the back of our jib. So since we have the center section in place now, we're going to go ahead and put a stand underneath to help us support the weight of the jib as we build forward. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and add an extension to it. The extension has two pieces on the end here that are very important. First of all, you have your T-bolt, and then you have your thumb bolt. The T-bolt has to be extended enough in order to fit flush into the top piece of the jib, at least the extension before it. You have a bolt in the bottom that you unscrew, and this will be eventually what you put on the bottom here to keep it in place. As you add them, you want to make sure all of your extensions are flush. If they're not, it could put undue stress on certain areas of the jib and cause a failure point. Once you attach it, you want to turn your thumb bolt and make sure that it can lock in place nice and tight. If it can't lock in place tight, then you do have to reassess the T-bolt on how much space you left there for it. Okay, once it's nice and tight, you pull on it with your nice tool, lock it into place, and then screw in the knob underneath. All right, we're only adding one extension to our jib today, so the next piece of the puzzle for us is going to be adding a tail extension. As you add to your jib, you do want to make sure that you are counterbalancing how much weight you're putting on each side. Right now, we're obviously very front heavy, so by adding a little bit of weight to the back, it's going to help us with the balancing. So the tail section is characteristic by a nice hole for your control box that you're going to add a little bit later. And also it has an area to add a cable in order to help support the weight of the jib as you get a longer section or as you get longer and longer. It just gives you an extra place to control how much weight is going on and to disperse that amongst all the areas and not cause one side of it to be a bit heavier than the other. Oh, did I take it out? There's not one in there. So again, you want to make sure it's flush. Check your thumb bolt if it can actually get a little bit tight on the top. If it does, great, you're in a perfect place. Use your tool, tighten it down. You're good to go. Now we're going to go ahead and add the other side, which is our head extension. All right, so now we have the full arm built. The next piece of the puzzle for us is going to be adding our camera sled. This is called the L bracket, and it goes on right in the front after we add our control rod. All right. When you do the control rods, the shortest control rod will go first, and it'll attach to this section here. And then our next control rod will be threaded through, connect with this. Okay. And then we have our leveler right here, which we will connect to the end of our head. and into the control rod. What this does is allow this area of the jib to control the camera and how level it is in whichever terrain you might be operating it in. Okay, once you get it in there, you want to push the jam bolt to the end so that it stays in place. Next, we're going to add the L bracket for our camera to sit on. The L bracket can be mounted one of two ways. You can either mount it underneath, or you can mount it upside down so that it's overhung like that. And what that would do is just give you more dramatic angles when you're using your jib. We're going to undersling it today. Thank you. It has to be perfect. Good. All right, once your head piece is attached, now you want to add your control box. The control box is going to be what's going to take care of your zoom, your pan, and your tilt speeds. You can control all of that on the front of this box, and everything connects on the bottom of this box. On the top, there's actually a nice little plate to put any sort of monitor that you might want to add to your assembly. This goes back here so that you can use it as a user very easily, reach out and change any controls that you need to. Okay, as you operate, this will actually hang. It's meant to do that so that it can be level to you wherever the boom arm is. It stays level so you can see your monitor. So that will hang like this. The next part we're going to do is add a weight to the back, and what this weight will represent to us is just counterbalancing the weight of the jib assembly, no camera. This is really important to do because if a camera falls off of your jib, essentially what could happen is you could lose and it could swing backwards. If you weight it properly to counterbalance just the boom arm first, then if the camera falls off, you still have that weight stuck in the center. Okay, so that's what we're going to do now. There are two poles to adding weights. The short pole goes on top, the long pole goes on the bottom. So you will actually add the weights to the longer pole. The shorter pole is just going to allow you to have the controls on it once you get to that point in the building process. Actually, let's do this so you can add weight from that side. This is a two-man process. Always have someone helping you and holding the other side so that the weight does not fall off as you add it.
25 going on. 25 going on.
Got it? Perfect. Once you add weight to your assembly, it's possible that you might need more weight or less weight depending on how long you are building your jib. In our case, we just needed 50 pounds. That may change for you. Next, we're going to go ahead and add the camera. Before we add the camera, we do have to level the head. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here. Move my leveler down here until that goes into the center. And then adjust my jam bolt so that it stays that way throughout my operation. Next, I want to make sure that this is completely down. The vertical part is completely down just by turning this knob. And I also want to disengage any servos that are attached. So right now I have my tilt servo here and my pan servo here that I'm going to disengage. And then I'm going to look at this camera plate and I'm going to try to also make sure that that is level. That's very important because as you add your camera, the weight of it might cause it to tilt just a little bit. Put your level on there, level that out. Next, you're going to add your camera plate. The camera plate uses a very small bolt that comes with your gear for your cam mate. This small bolt holds your camera plate in place on the jib. When you do this, you want to give yourself a bit of center of gravity. Obviously, when you're moving this, if you put it towards the back, it's going to be back heavy. If you put it towards the front, it's going to be front heavy. So you want to keep it somewhere in the middle where it's not front or back. You may have to adjust this later, but it does give you a good starting point. Okay, once you have your camera plate placed in a position where it has a nice center of gravity, you can go ahead and add your camera. Thank you. Okay, you're gonna go. Your camera may be a little bit front heavy or it may be a little back heavy, depending on where you put that plate. It's easy just to slide the plate a little bit backwards or a little bit forwards to compensate. Once you have that completed, where you're central, your camera is sitting central, you want to make it so that it can be balanced without moving back to center. In other words, you want it to stay where you keep it, where you let go of it. If you do not do this and you leave it without this type of balance, this vertical balance, you will be pushing against the motors of your servo and it will damage your equipment. So it's really important that you do achieve this center. Also, what would happen to you as an operator is you would slowly see any of your shots start to move downwards without you touching anything on your controls. So it's important to have this center of gravity set for your vertical balance. In order to do that, again, make sure all your servos are disengaged and you turn the knob until you can reach a place where the camera will stay where you put it. If you have cables that are going to be connected to your camera, you want to connect those cables before you start to move the vertical balance because those cables are going to make the camera back heavy. So it's always good to make sure those are connected first before you start doing this. One cable that we do need to connect is our lens servo. We forgot this before. So this servo consists of two pieces. You have the cable that's going to connect into the jib unit right here. And then you have the actual servo the servo motor that's going to attach to your camera lens. Now there's different motors depending on which type of lenses you're using, whether you're using a Fujinon or whether you're using a Canon. They have different teeth. This gets attached right on top of your lens. Now your cable will attach to your assembly unit. Underneath you have a small cable. It's a serial cable that will connect to your zoom. And this is so you can control zoom from the back of your jib. And then you also have a couple of other cables that control iris or focus. In this case today we're using the focus. And you notice after I added this to my jib, it's a little bit front heavy on my camera. So I'm going to move my camera slightly backwards. I don't have any more space to move it backwards. right, so I'm back at center. Now I can start my vertical balance. Check along the way to see how much progress you've made. So if I push the camera up, push the camera down, it's still coming back to center. That means it's not quite balanced yet. I haven't found that center of gravity. So now it stays in place when I push it up. Does it stay in place when I push it down? Perfect. So now I see that I've found the perfect center of gravity. I'm going to put it back to center, leave it there, and I'm going to re-engage my servos. Next, we're going to add our umbilical cable. What this does is a multi-cable that takes everything that's connected down here at the camera, including those lens controls that we just attached, and allow them to be operated back there at our control box. Any excess cable can be rolled up and hung from the jib in this area. If you have any other cables to add to your jib at this point, you would go ahead and add them, anything that you would need at all, because now we're going to weight the full range of how heavy this jib may be. We're going to counterbalance it in the back, just so that way we can swing it very, very easily when we get to that point. Oh, God.
25 going on.
Weight should be added in even numbers, so if you put 25 on one side, 25 should be added to the other side.
5 going on. 2.5 going on.
So once your weight is added, or at least what you think might be the enough weight that you need in order to counterbalance your jib, go ahead and unlock it and move the stand out of the way. With the jib unlocked, it should stay on its own in one place. However, as you see, we have a little bit of it, it's a little bit front heavy for us. Now we could either we could add more weight in the back, or we can a little weight in the front. In our case, we might want to consider adding our controls at this time to see how much weight that would actually add to our jib. So the controls go on the back. This is a completely user-preferred area. So you can decide to put your zoom on your right hand, or you can decide to put your zoom pistol on the left hand. Totally up to you. As a camera operator personally, I prefer it on my right, so I will go ahead and attach it there. Your pan and tilt. This can either be underslung here, or it can be overslung. Again, this is user preference. This particular cable gets plugged in behind the control box, where you can set how you would like to make your pan, your zoom, or your tilt go fast or slow. Now we're going to take the stand away again and check our balance. So without the stand, the jib is slightly back heavy. adding these particular items to the back. Now what you can do for that is move one of your weights off, keep your controls on there, and you can actually find your center of gravity where you actually need this weight. So we're a little bit front heavy. If we added this weight here in the back, we're still a little front heavy. Added the weight there. Now we're perfectly level all the way across the jib. This is actually something that's very important. A lot of jib operators use ankle bracelets. They look like ankle bracelets, but they're basically weight bracelets that go across the jib, and they can move them as they operate. Because if you're thinking about operating in conditions where there's lots of sand or where there's rain, that adds to the weight of the jib. So once you've figured out how much weight you're going to add to your jib, we'll go ahead and lock in that weight. You want to lock the ends of your weight bar. By doing that, you just use the knobs, the same knobs that we put on the bottom to lock in our extensions. And these just screw into the end of your weight bar. Now again, if you want to put your controls on the top, you can. You can move your controls to this top bar, and you can operate it from there. I'm going to move that one up. It's all user preference, how you operate and where you put your controls. Totally up to you. Perfect. All right, so now our jib is built. We thank you very much for your attention, and have a very, very good time practicing building and operating your jib assembly.